Welcome to Variety Vault, the ultimate destination where imagination meets reality. Step into a world of adventure, mystery, and wonder, crafted just for you. Here we unlock hidden gems from history, unravel mind-bending mysteries, and bring the most fascinating stories to life. From lost civilizations to futuristic inventions, Variety Vault has it all. Every video is a journey, an adventure that takes you beyond the ordinary. Whether it's exploring myths, unraveling conspiracies, or witnessing the wonders of nature, each story is told with stunning visuals and captivating narration. Subscribe now and unlock the doors to knowledge, mystery, and adventure. Welcome to Variety Vault, where every story is an experience. Ramadan is a month of blessings and goodness. Together we embrace the spirit of faith and love during this holy month. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for special content all month long. Ramadan Kareem. Omar stood in the center of the room, his eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. The cracked walls seemed to pulse with an eerie life of their own, and the lone ceiling lamp swayed, making the shadows dance like ghostly figures on the ground. The air was thick, filled with the scent of dust and mold. Suddenly he felt a cold breeze pass by him, even though the windows were shut. Something was here, something he couldn't see yet. The door hadn't been there moments ago, yet it looked like it had always been a part of the room. Omar stood before it, hesitant, his hands trembling as he approached. The strange carvings on its surface glowed faintly under the flickering light. When he touched the cold wood, he felt a faint pulse beneath his fingertips, as if the door was breathing. Omar cautiously pushed the door open, finding himself in an endless corridor. He pressed his foot against the damp floor, hearing the echo of his own steps bounce back, as if someone was following him. He tried to move toward the end of the corridor, but it seemed to stretch farther away with each step. He swallowed hard, his heartbeat growing louder. Something was here, something that didn't want him to leave. At the end of the corridor, Omar spotted a faint light seeping through a narrow gap. It encouraged him to move forward, but before he could reach it, a human-like shadow emerged from the darkness. It had no features, no movement, yet its presence was overwhelming. There was no audible sound, yet Omar clearly heard a voice inside his head whisper, "You shouldn't be here." As Omar stared at the unknown shadow, it suddenly vanished as if it had never existed. A voice inside him urged him to move forward. He turned to see another door, older and eerier than before. The symbols carved into its surface glowed with an invisible heat, and when he reached out to touch them, a sharp burning sensation seared his skin, as if the door was alive. Omar hesitated before pushing the door open. As it creaked, the darkness revealed a spiraling stone staircase leading downward with no visible end. The walls were covered in cold moss, and the air was thick with dampness. He took one step inside, but before descending, he heard whispers calling his name from the depths below. Omar began descending the staircase cautiously. Each step echoed strangely, as if the walls themselves were breathing. This was not ordinary darkness. It was thick, almost tangible. He felt unseen eyes watching him from the shadows, but he didn't dare turn around. The whispers calling his name grew clearer, yet they were not human. Omar reached the end of the staircase, finding himself in a strange underground corridor. The wooden doors lining the sides were old, yet the symbols carved into them seemed alive, pulsing faintly. He reached out toward one of the doors, but before he could touch it, it shifted slightly, almost as if the place itself was watching him. Omar wasn't prepared for what happened next. As he stared at the door, a small section of it suddenly creaked open, and a pale, thin hand emerged, belonging to something long buried. The fingers moved slowly, feeling the air as if searching for something. Omar's heart nearly stopped as he watched it stretch further toward him. Omar took a step back, but the door creaked open by itself, the wood cracking as it moved. Behind it was nothing but a black abyss stretching into infinity. It wasn't just darkness, it was something alive, devouring the light around it. From the depths, a cold breath escaped, as if something hidden within was silently watching him. Omar's throat went dry as he heard his name spoken from within the abyss. But the voice was not human. It was slow, deep, reverberating in the air, as if coming from another place, another time. He wanted to move, to run, but his feet wouldn't respond. Something in the darkness was calling him, inviting him in. Before he could react, a black hand emerged from the abyss, as if made of shadow itself. It clamped onto his wrist with an iron grip, pulling him forward. He tried to resist, to break free, but the hold was unyielding. There was no sound except for his quickened breathing, no light except for the reflection of his terror in his own eyes. The darkness began to consume him, piece by piece. It was not an ordinary fall. It felt like drifting into an endless void. He didn't feel his bones hitting anything. There was no ground, no sky, just emptiness. Around him, faint shadows moved, distorted faces appearing and disappearing, watching him without speaking, without nodding, just staring, as if waiting for something. The whispers grew clearer. They were not ordinary voices. They shifted constantly, resonating in the air around him. Some were so close it felt like someone was speaking directly into his ear, while others were distant, distorted, as if coming from unknown places. He couldn't understand the words, but a strange sense of dread crept into his body. Amidst the nothingness, amidst the never-ending darkness, another hand appeared. But this time, it wasn't black. It was white, almost pure, reaching toward him gently, as if offering him a way out. Omar stared at it, unsure if he should trust it, but he felt something different, something he hadn't felt since he entered this place. Omar didn't know what to do. The dark hand was pulling him forcefully, but the white hand reached out gently, as if offering him one last chance. His eyes darted between them, his heart pounding wildly. There was no time to think. The void trembled, as if the very world was about to collapse. Hesitantly, Omar reached out. He wasn't sure if his choice was right, but something inside him told him this was his only chance. As soon as his fingers brushed against the white hand, the darkness retreated, and a faint light emerged from the void, as if breaking through the walls of nothingness. Omar's eyes shot open, his heart pounding as if he had been running for hours. But he was in his room, or at least it looked like his room. The furniture was in place, but the colors were unnaturally faded. He turned to the clock, but it showed a time that couldn't possibly be right. Omar stood before the mirror, but something felt unnatural. His reflection wasn't as he knew it. His eyes were darker, as if they carried a secret yet to be uncovered. Worse, when he raised his hand to touch the mirror's surface, his reflection didn't move with him. This wasn't just an optical illusion. There was someone else. Someone who looked exactly like him, but wasn't him. Omar sat in his chair, staring at his open notebook. He didn't remember when he had opened it, but the words inside were in his handwriting. "You are not alone." A thick line was drawn beneath it, as if the writer wanted to emphasize the message. He flipped through the pages, but there was nothing else. Who had written these words? And why? Omar moved down the hallway, the lights dim and the silence heavy. Suddenly, he heard footsteps behind him. His breathing quickened, and he turned quickly, but saw nothing. He tried to convince himself it was just his imagination, but the shadows at the edges of his vision moved, as if hiding from his eyes. Omar stepped into the living room, feeling an unnatural chill in the air. No one was supposed to be there, or so he thought. But then he noticed a figure sitting on the couch, its features barely visible in the dim light. A shiver ran down his spine as the mysterious man slowly lifted his head, his silver eyes gleaming as if they knew everything about him. The mysterious man didn't speak. Instead, he slowly reached out, placing Omar's notebook on the table, pointing at it with his finger as if urging him to read. Omar hesitated, but his curiosity won. He opened the notebook. The pages were filled with words, yet they weren't his. There were sentences, messages written in a strange language, yet they felt eerily familiar. Omar's head snapped up, his eyes widening in shock. The mysterious man was changing before him. His features sharpened, until Omar realized the terrifying truth. The man looked exactly like him. It was as if he were staring into a mirror. But what he saw wasn't just a reflection, it was alive. The man smirked, his voice eerily familiar, yet deeper and more haunting. Haven't you realized yet? I am you. Omar felt the ground tremble beneath him. The walls of the room began to fade as if they had never been real. His body grew lighter, as if he were disappearing. The mysterious man reached out, his smile cold and unreadable, and said in a quiet yet devastating voice, "You were always here, but you were never you." When Omar disappeared completely, it wasn't just an ordinary disappearance. It was as if time itself had reshaped reality anew. All that remained of him was a distant echo fading into nothingness, as if his existence had been an illusion. The next morning, his mother sat at the kitchen table, staring at the undrank cup of tea. She felt that something was missing, a void she couldn't explain, but she couldn't remember who or what had occupied it. Throughout the house, there was no trace of Omar. No pictures, no books, no toys. It was as if his life had been completely erased, but the truth was more complicated than it seemed. Omar hadn't disappeared, he had been replaced. Or rather, he had been transported to another dimension, where he wasn't supposed to be. Perhaps he had been part of a hidden experiment, or perhaps he had simply been the victim of some unexplained force that had reconfigured his existence elsewhere. His mother hadn't just lost him, she had been forced to forget about him entirely, as if his mind had never existed in this world in the first place. But the real question is, if there is a new Omar, where did the original Omar go? And will he ever return? Thank you for watching. Wishing you a Ramadan full of blessings and goodness. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. Ramadan Kareem.